Well, good morning. Thank you for being here. As everyone knows, we had a line of severe storms cross into Indiana March 31st into April 1st, producing what the National Weather Service has confirmed as 23 tornadoes all across the state. From the moment those storms hit, our local emergency managers, our local firefighters, law enforcement, emergency medical services personnel immediately started taking care of those in greatest need in their communities. Within hours, the Indiana Department of Homeland Security responded out to Sullivan County, Johnson County, Morgan County, and started to assist those locals with the response and search and rescue actions. Within a week, we had asked the governor to declare a state of emergency here in Indiana and request federal disaster assistance from FEMA. And we're happy to announce that the President of the United States over the weekend notified us that that disaster request has been approved. And so today, and really immediately, FEMA started coordinating their efforts to get folks here into Indiana. And today we just are going to discuss a little bit of the actions that we are planning as we move forward here in Indiana for our recovery efforts. Turn it over to Brian for some remarks from FEMA.
Thank you, Director. So as Director said, on Saturday, the President of the United States signed disaster declaration for 12 counties here in Indiana. That allows us to provide individual assistance to the survivors in those counties and affected areas. What that means is we have disaster survivor assistance teams that are en route as we speak, that will be on the ground later today and tomorrow morning, and will be reaching out door to door, knocking on doors of the most affected counties that have been declared in order to ensure that the residents of Indiana are getting registered. That is the greatest message at this point right now, is that the affected residents, the survivors, are going through the registration process. It's important to note that if over the last 2 weeks the survivors had called 211 or had registered through the state, that does not automatically provide registration through FEMA. So it's very important that in the packets, information packets that you've been afforded, that we get the word out that DisasterAssistance.gov is one way online for survivors to register. Number 2 is downloading the FEMA application on their phones. And number 3 is to call FEMA at 1-800-621-3362. Again, that number will be provided and made public. And there are already staff members manning those lines in order to assist with the registration. It is also important to note that another initial step that survivors need to take is to reach out to your insurance companies and ensure that you are registered with your insurance companies, file claims. That is oftentimes the quickest way to get the response that they are looking for. To summarize, it is very important to understand that we have folks that will be on the ground in these 12 counties and affected communities as early as tomorrow, and we will be meeting the survivors where they are. In addition to that, over the next several days, week to 10 days, we will be identifying areas that we can establish disaster recovery centers. So as folks are registering and have questions or have paperwork to submit, again, we are meeting them where they are and providing them the opportunity to submit their paperwork, ask questions, and work out any issues that they may have with our FEMA folks on the ground where they are.
Yeah, thank you, Brian. I know since from the beginning now, people have asked, okay, what does this mean? We've asked for a federal declaration. What's that really mean to those Hoosiers that have been affected by that? And I've said it just expands our bandwidth. So we have, over the last couple of weeks, provided what we call one-stop shops in Sullivan and Johnson counties, and had a number of individuals, over 100, have taken that opportunity to come to those centers in those counties to assist with lost items that may be driver's license, maybe some type of birth certificate or other needs. So we've had a variety of state agencies there, as well as our volunteer groups. And now, as we bring in our federal partners, that just expands those opportunities. And so, as Brian said, we really want to get the word out, utilizing the website, utilizing the phone number, or the app to start getting those additional resources lined up for them. Certainly our team here at IDHS has been very involved. Mary and your team from the aspect of response, and maybe talk a little bit more about the volunteer groups that also help bridge the gap from local, state, and federal assistance.
Okay, as the director mentioned, we immediately started response operations here in IDHS, and the recovery efforts actually started at that same time. One partner I would like to mention that we work with heavily in these events is our voluntary organizations active during disasters. They bring just a wealth of immediate need resources to us. We want to thank them for all that they've done so far, because without them we'd be much more delayed in getting this recovery started. I know we've had teams out cutting debris, serving food, serving water, passing out cleaning supplies, just pretty much every basic need right off after an event like this. Our voluntary partners have stepped in to help. So we definitely want to give them kudos and say how important they are to this process as well. And they'll continue to help us all getting all those unmet needs taken care of as we work with our federal partners to go forward in this recovery.
So again, you know, the widespread damage, we have a graphic on the wall, probably our fifth worst tornado outbreak, and being really from, you know, as far north as Lake County all the way down to Monroe County has really been difficult in getting out to assess the damage. But we really appreciate the work of our local emergency managers assisting our folks within IDHS, and now welcome the additional collaboration and assistance through FEMA. So with that, I'll open up to questions.
How long do you expect the disaster assistance teams to be on site door knocking?
The disaster assistance teams will be on the ground as long as it takes. We need to ensure that we reach everyone in these affected counties. So it's difficult to put a time limit on it. There is an application period, which is up to 60 days from the event. So if that's what it takes to ensure that we've reached everyone in the affected counties, we're prepared to do so.
And those teams that are on their way right now, there's specific counties that they're going to first, or are they kind of being spread out right now?
We've been working hand in hand. One thing that I was remiss to say is, as FEMA has come into this operation, I don't think that we could ever ask for a better partner than the state of Indiana. The state of Indiana has had all of these things already sent in motion, and we're falling in on their plan. This is locally executed, this is state-led, and we're here to support through our federal resources. So as Indiana, who better knows the Hoosiers and those that are affected? They are helping us decide where it is most important to go to first, and we're following their lead as we employ our folks to get out on the streets.
And for people at home, can you just explain why it was so important that we were able to get this assistance?
Well, I think that in any disaster, there's going to be limited resources. What makes this disaster stand out, especially to Hoosiers, is that, you know, there was loss of life. And when there's loss of life, it affects those families and the survivors so much more so. And to be able to show that we are here standing beside Indiana and the programs that they had on the ground in order to reinforce their programs, provide them with greater bandwidth, and the survivors is extremely important to the administration, to FEMA, and obviously greatly to the survivors in Indiana.
I saw that the deadline is in June. What is your message to those families? Because I know it is a process. So the turnaround time, while they might, submit their application, what can they expect moving forward before they hear back? Or
So that's a very good question, and it's important to emphasize that the deadline is in June to apply. That does not put the deadline of the entire process. So we can't emphasize more strongly enough, apply through these means that we've mentioned. DisasterAssistance.gov, through the 1-800 number, or download on their smartphone. Ensure that their application is there. We have folks that are ready to work with people immediately. However, again, placing a timeline on something is very difficult because people's circumstances are very different. But they will have someone every step of the way guiding them through that process, and we will go to every extent to ensure that no one falls through the cracks.
is there anything else that you would like to add?
Again, I just think you talk about the importance. So, the local resources were quickly overwhelmed, and then as we came in as a state agency and multiple state agencies, then our resources were overwhelmed, which is why the need, the expedited request from Governor Holcomb to FEMA and the White House was initiated. And so, again, very pleased now that we have additional resources. And being in these counties multiple times, Sullivan, Johnson, especially, many of those folks are gone. So their home was completely wiped away. They've gone somewhere else to seek assistance that we may not know about. We're certainly tracking those folks that we have put up in hotels for 30 days, but it's those folks that we don't know where they went. And so it's important to find those folks and make sure that they call the number and go to that website or that app to making sure that we know where they are and what assistance is needed. And they may not know what assistance is needed. And so please reach out and make that call.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Have you learned any lessons from this? Will there be any changes at IDHS going forward?
Well, there's always ways to improve, but I will tell you from the locals immediately as we were watching these storms come in, the early notifications of Hoosiers to know that storms are coming. So through multiple news channels or weather apps, it's so important to follow that. As I talked to many of the survivors, they seem to have had 10, maybe 15 minutes to find some location of safety. And they've heeded the warnings. They went to their bathrooms, they went to the centers of their home, they went to basements, they went to neighbors' homes that had a safety location. And I credit that to the number of folks that have survived, and fortunately our low numbers of fatalities for that. And I think it's just how do we build that response in better? But our coordination with our local and state agencies was remarkable. And we will be doing an after action certainly to learn how we can be better. But I can't say enough or stress the importance of early planning and preparedness at that local level really paid off here to ensure that fatalities and injuries were as low as possible.
Lastly, you said this was the 5th worst tornado outbreak across the state. Have you been able to put a dollar figure on about how much all of this damage will cost?
No, we're calculating that now. And so we have usually 30 days to kind of get those calculations. We'll be reaching out and asking for an extension on that because our focus has been on that individual assistance. Now we'll be, as we work through that individual assistance now, looking at the bigger picture, the structures, the infrastructure, the power poles that have been knocked down. And so all of that damage, we'll be calculating all of that and putting into to our documents. But too early to say